Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue will look to get to 2-0 for just the third time since 2007 on Saturday when it hosts Southern Illinois. I'll touch on some final thoughts after rewatching the season opening win over Ball State before previewing the Salukis, touching on some key things I'll be watching, and wrapping up with some big basketball recruiting news that broke on Tuesday morning. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Talking football, talking basketball, got it all going on there. Come follow, come join the conversation. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts because we're not going anywhere anytime soon. There's a lot to talk about. Be sure to subscribe and send in your questions, guys. You're always welcome to send in questions. They'll end up on the show. Do so on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond, or you can email me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. It was great to rewatch the game a little bit. It's always fun. It's always fun to rewatch these games because you see things a little bit differently. You're not as worried about watching the ball. You know how things go. You know how the game ends up. It's a good opportunity to catch a few things. Purdue's first two drives were really crisp, really nice. That's probably the script. Josh Henson said in last week's presser that he does some scripting. Now, he mentioned that he's going to come off that. And maybe Purdue did come off the script a little bit because Ball State was very much stacking the box, very much begging Purdue to throw it on them. Purdue did so. Purdue hit a couple of deep shots there. I mean, on the first play, it had a holding call against Ball State's defensive back, but that was Purdue throwing it into that 10 to 19 yard range downfield. Then you saw a deeper one. Then you saw a deep one down the sideline. You saw Purdue really air it out, but I think that's probably some scripted stuff or stuff that Purdue had ready to go. It was executed very well. That's a good sign. That's a very good sign. If you can come out in game one and you can execute your script nicely, that's a big positive. That's a big positive. I noticed that Purdue's using a different kicker for kickoffs, number 93, Seth Turner. Not that it's some massive piece of noteworthy information, but Spencer Porath didn't do kickoffs last year either. That was always Ben Freehill. So Purdue's doing that again this season. There were a lot of starters on special teams. I noticed on punt coverage, Ardarius Coffey, Tajrael, Manny Powell, all these guys were noticeable on punt coverage. So it's interesting. Each school's going to have different thoughts there. Each coach is going to have different thoughts there. Purdue's all about the special teams, though. Purdue has really emphasized that. So it makes sense to see starters out there to really maximize what you get in the third phase of the game. There was that illegal man downfield play to open up the second quarter. Ball State almost completely blew it up. It was about a step away from taking out both Brown and Maccabee. Brown made a really nice read to keep it alive, but it was just a busted play. Because had he kept it and had he ran with it, he was going to get a yard or two maybe, but Ball State had a couple defenders ready for him. And when he threw it, he had a couple offensive linemen. I want to say it was Bakeen Coley, who was 8 or 9 yards downfield. Just one of those plays. You can't win either way. It is what it is. It happens. That throw sailed a little bit. George Burren dropped it, but he had to go up pretty good for that. For the most part, not a ton of high throws on the day. Sometimes you see that early on. A quarterback gets real amped up and he's overthrowing stuff, or maybe a guy gets nervous and he's bouncing stuff. Brown was pretty consistent. He was pretty consistent in putting a ball out there accurately, at the right elevation, at the right speed. He did a really nice job on that, I thought. A couple of interior defensive linemen, Chops Harkless, Jamarion Harkless, he goes by Chops. He was really impactful on the interior of the defensive line. He's huge, man. 345 pounds. He takes up a lot of space. He really does. I was impressed by the amount of space he eats up. That's valuable. That changes things. That really changes what a team has to do when someone clogs up that much space in the run game. When the pocket breaks down and a quarterback may try to move through the pocket, in between the tackles forward. That's really big. He was noticeable. And then TJ Lindsey, the redshirt freshman defensive tackle from Auburn, there were a few plays where you saw him get out there and really look a cut above. He looked really good in a few snaps. I'm interested to watch him build consistency over time because he's still young. He's still only a redshirt freshman, but we've seen some really encouraging things from him. I think there's a lot to like. Going back to the offense, I liked what Purdue did in the screen game. We talked about it on the last episode, the extension of the run game, because Ball State did, and I noticed this more rewatching it. Ball State really stacked the box. It wasn't dropping safeties deep a whole lot. Ball State wanted to take away the run game from Purdue, and that's fair, because as you came into this game, you knew Devin Mockabee is a proven commodity. You know Ryan Brown can run. And early indications were Purdue really wanted to run the ball. But some of the short passing stuff, some of the screen game, Purdue had a couple of really nice screen plays. And this team doesn't have a big abundance of the throw it up, jump ball, Calvin Johnson type wide receivers. Not that those grow on trees anyways, but that's not what this team has. This team has some smaller receivers. It has some guys with a little bit of size, but you're not looking out there at a bunch of 6'3", 6'4", 6'5" wide receivers. So you have to manufacture some ways to create space, create yards. There was one to number 12 Purdue had in the red zone there that it got 6 or 7 yards on that set up the next play where Ryan Brown was able to scramble for a touchdown. It was good stuff. It was good offensive play calling. I really liked what Josh Henson did. It all made sense. It was all cohesive. Now, there were a few throws that Ryan Brown got away with in the second half. Part of that, obviously, is that Purdue's still throwing it up big, and you're going to take a few more chances because the game was over at that point. Once Purdue went up 14-0, the game was over. Ball State was not going to be able to win this thing. There were a few throws, though, that were into windows that might not be there against a better opponent, that might get closed upon quicker against a better opponent. For the most part, his decision-making was really solid. A couple of them, though, I think I counted 2 or 3 that, boy, you're playing Ohio State, you're playing Michigan, you're playing Notre Dame, that might be going the other way. So be curious to see as he settles in how that looks. But all in all, this was a really nice performance. There's your typical week 1 stuff to nitpick, but the things that you're not nitpicking from week 1, penalties, turnovers, Purdue, no turnovers, 3 penalties on the day. That's awesome. That is something you can grow upon. That's something you can absolutely live with. If you tell Purdue you're getting 3 penalties per game this season, Purdue's going to be thrilled. You'll take that every time. The missed tackles were part of it. In the rewatch, yeah, it was impactful. It led to Ball State extending some drives. But at the same time, man, Ball State didn't try to do much against Purdue. Ball State abandoned the vertical passing game remarkably quickly. It had nothing doing there. I think I'd expected a little more from Ball State, to be honest with you. I knew Ball State wasn't going to be good. It wasn't good at all. I'm pretty confident that Purdue's going to see a better team on Saturday. But, Purdue gets Southern Illinois, so we'll see. We still have to see what Purdue's going to do against a better opponent. Southern Illinois is going to be better. I don't know that that's exactly what I'm thinking of, but Southern Illinois is up next. September means lots of things. The return of football season has us all excited. Pumpkin-scented candles fill my house. Leaves are beginning to fall here in central Indiana, and the weather is starting to turn. It's also Life Insurance Awareness Month. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, my biggest passion is ensuring that my clients have the proper amounts and types of life insurance. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me, jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. Let's make sure your family and your world is properly protected. This will be the second all-time meeting between the Boilermakers and the Salukis. A 35-13 win back in 2014 kicked off the history between the two. Danny Anthrop hit the century mark with over 100 receiving yards. Danny Etling was Purdue's quarterback on that day, as Purdue got one of its 3 wins in the 2014 season. In this game, Purdue will be looking to start 2-0 for just the third time since 2007. It did so in 2020 when it beat Iowa and Illinois to start the season, COVID-shortened season. And then the following year, 2021, Purdue beat Oregon State, then Purdue went on the road to beat UConn. Those are the only 2 times since 2007 that Purdue has started a season 2-0. And Barry Odom is looking to become the first coach to start his Purdue career with a 2-0 record since, I'll wait for it, Cleo O'Donnell back in 1916, who opened his time at Purdue with a pair of wins over DePaul and Wabash. Tom Dienhart pulled that one out this week. What a deep cut by Dienhart. That was excellent stuff. I love it. Gotta love it. Wild stuff. So that's where Purdue's at. Southern Illinois kicked off the season last week with a 49-3 win over Thomas More. A Google search tells me that Thomas More is in Kentucky. I wouldn't have gotten that. And it just made the jump this year from Division III to Division II. It's not often I haven't heard of a school. I'm pretty good with this stuff. Never heard of Thomas More. So, it's hard to gauge much from that. The gap's going to be massive between Southern Illinois and Thomas More. 5 forced turnovers by the Salukis, including a pick 6. You don't look at that as something that's going to be replicable against a Big Ten opponent. Less than 4.5 yards per carry for Southern Illinois on offense. Not a great number. That's what Southern Illinois did. I don't love that. Kind of like with Purdue, talking about what Purdue did against Ball State. I don't love that the rushing totals aren't great in a game that you should theoretically dominate. But I also didn't crunch any film on this. I don't know if there is film for the general public on Southern Illinois versus Thomas More, but this is a solid FCS program. The Missouri Valley is probably the best conference in the FCS. It's a different alignment than in basketball. So this has North Dakota State. This has South Dakota State. This has Illinois State with Brock's back. I'm looking it up right now to see who all else is in there. Because there are some good teams in the Missouri Valley. Indiana State's not one of them. Northern Iowa's historically solid. Youngstown State's historically solid. That's a good conference. It's a middle-of-the-pack team in that league. Good football there, though. A dual-threat quarterback again here for Purdue. DJ Williams is the guy. He didn't run a whole lot in the opener, but he didn't have to. I would expect to see him run more against Purdue. He went 17 for 24, 227 yards, and 3 touchdowns in that season opener. A big part of Southern Illinois going 4-8 last year was this guy, DJ Williams, getting hurt early on in the season. He's pretty good. He's a pretty good FCS quarterback. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm uber familiar with the landscape of FCS quarterbacks, but he's big. He's 6'3", 215, good-sized guy. Was highly regarded early on in his career. He transferred in to Southern Illinois, won Conference Freshman of the Year as a freshman. I think he was at Murray State. I forgot to write that down in my notes. Purdue's probably going to be favored around 20 or so here. I looked at Bill Connolly's S&P Plus, and he had it at 15.5. I'm going to guess Purdue's going to be favored by more than that. But I don't think this is some drastically different team than Ball State, if not a little bit better. It's been to three playoffs in the last 10 years at the FCS level. Nick Hill's been there for 10 years now. He's an alum, I believe, of Southern Illinois. They're ranked 15th in the FCS coaches poll this week. So it's a well-regarded team. It's not, you can hear that and you can think, oh, they're a live dog. I don't know about that, but I do think this is probably going to be a better team than what Purdue saw. I think at least with a more proven threat of a vertical passing game, it's a different look a little bit. Purdue is 14-0 against FCS teams since the split of Division I into the two subdivisions in the 1970s. If you're Purdue, it's a wonderful stat to keep alive. The only time I can remember it being real close was the Indiana State game in Darrell Hazel's first year. If there's been another close one against an FCS, I'm not remembering it. Although back in 2006, Purdue did give up 35 to Indiana State in a season-opening 60-35 win. Some areas to watch here as Purdue is entering this one as a big favorite again, as it is a little bit of a final tune-up for Purdue. The run game. I know I've talked about it. I've harped on it. You're probably already sick of hearing me talk about Purdue's running game, but that's where we're at here, man. That's where we're at. This is really important for Purdue. Purdue has to show that it's capable of running the football. It just does. 3.5 yards per carry against one of the worst teams in the FBS isn't ideal. I agree, though. They stacked the box. They made Purdue throw it. They made Purdue really work to run it. I want to see what Purdue does here. Can Purdue effectively run the ball? There's been a lot of talk about Devin Mockabee climbing up that career rushing list. He needed just shy of 1,200 yards this year to clear Mike Allstott. That's probably going to be a stretch. I'm going to guess he needs to hit the century mark on Saturday to really have a good shot at hitting 1,000 on the year. Just 59 yards in the season opener. Purdue didn't need him to run a ton, but sometimes you need to stat pack a little bit in some of these games that you're really going to win big. So we'll see what he does there. And I want to see not Devin Brown. He's at Cal. He's the Ohio State transfer. I want to see what Ryan Brown can do in the run game because he didn't run a ton. There wasn't much designed for him necessarily. There were a couple of reads. I think he took off and ran a couple of times, but curious to see him as well. And then those backup running backs, Malachi Thomas and Antonio Harris, only combined for 5 carries. What does that look like here? Curious to see. Turnovers. No turnovers on either side in the season opener. Southern Illinois forced 5. Completely different situation. Can Purdue take care of the ball again and put out another clean effort? That would be really encouraging. If you can do that again and go into the meatier schedule with 2 clean performances under your belt, I think you feel really good about what you've done. On the flip side, how does Purdue's defense attack? Because last week, Ball State didn't put the ball in danger through the air. It's hard to throw interceptions when you're throwing half of your passes behind the line of scrimmage. I suspect Southern Illinois is going to let it rip a little bit more. I'm going to guess that Southern Illinois comes out swinging. This is a program that's beaten FBS programs in recent memory. It beat Northwestern. It beat Northern Illinois. It's not afraid of anybody. Nick Hill was the coach for those teams, so I suspect Southern Illinois is going to come out ready to play. Can Purdue force some havoc? Can Purdue force a turnover? I do tend to think that forcing fumbles can be a bit fluky, but Purdue would love to pick off a couple of passes. And then I just want to see Purdue take care of business again against a lesser opponent, because this is your last tune-up type of game. It gets real after this. I wouldn't be surprised to see Purdue work on some things. maybe be aggressive on a late fourth down if Purdue's up big. Or we saw it against Ball State where it looked like Purdue was kind of keeping the pedal on offense a little bit, throwing the ball downfield well after the game was decided. Because why not? Purdue had nothing to lose. It kind of becomes a practice at that point, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of teams did to Purdue last year. But this is where you get to work on things. This is where you get to smooth out your depth chart a little bit, because when you hit USC next week, it's go time. It gets real at that point. Around the league, I don't always want to do this every week where we take a deep dive in, but some things I saw in week one that really pertain to Purdue. Before the season, Northwestern looked like it was going to be Purdue's best chance at a Big Ten win. I'd seen some early look-ahead lines that had Purdue as an 8-point underdog up there on the lake. That, without a doubt, changed this past week. Northwestern looked terrible. 23-3 loss at Tulane. 4 interceptions thrown by Preston Stone. Less than 3 yards per carry for Northwestern in the run game. Tulane might be the best team in the group of 5. They might be the group of 5 playoff representative, especially now that Boise State looked abhorrent last week. But that's still a really bad showing. Purdue goes up to Evanston on October 18th. Keep an eye there. I did have eyes on Minnesota's win over Buffalo. That final score of 23-10 was a little misleading. Minnesota outgained Buffalo 443 to 151, almost tripling them up. That's pretty strong. That's pretty dominant. That game is going to be a challenge for Purdue. Minnesota is far from an elite team. It is not a super explosive offense. A lot of that offensive yardage came because Minnesota had the ball a lot. Because Buffalo, going with Taquan Roberson at quarterback, somehow he's still in college. It's not like Buffalo was moving the ball much, but Minnesota's one to keep an eye on. And then Rutgers, a 34-31 win over Ohio U. I watched a good amount of this one live. It was not a good look. It was not a good look at all. Ohio got whatever it wanted on offense. To be frank, Rutgers got a very fortuitous call to not give the ball back to Ohio. I think it was a defensive holding call on Ohio that gave Rutgers a first down on a third down play, that if that call wasn't made, Rutgers is punting it back to Ohio. It's not good to give up 31 points to a MAC team. Keep your eye out on New Jersey. That's your homecoming game to end the month of October. Time will tell on the rest. Those are the 3 that really jumped out. As you look at the schedule, I mean, Ohio State is going to be good. Michigan's going to be good. USC was very much running it up. There are a lot of good teams Purdue plays. So there's 3 right there, though, that I think Purdue fans are going to be keeping an eye on. There's a lot of football left, though. It's week 1. Observe, make your notes, but don't form your narrative that's not going to be moved all season after week 1. All right, a lot of you guys have probably been waiting the whole episode for this, so here we go. Basketball lands a commit from Jacob Weber, the number 31 overall player in the 2026 class. I believe he's the highest rated guy, assuming he signs and doesn't do what Cannon Catchings did. I assume that he's going to be the highest rated guy since Caleb Swanigan to get all settled in at Purdue. 6'6", he's from Nebraska. He will be playing his senior season at La Lumiere up in LaPorte, so the recruiting rankings will inevitably factor him in as an Indiana recruit, even though he's not. Big-time shooter. He is a big-time shooter, one of the best, if not the best, three-point shooter in his class. He joins Luke Ertl as commits in the 2026 class, both of whom are inside the top 50 nationally over on Rivals. This is a really promising class so far. This is really nice identification by Purdue and recruiting to what they want to do, because when Purdue started recruiting both of these guys, neither of them were top 50 guys. Luke Ertl was maybe ranked, maybe not, And Jacob Weber's still listed in like the 140s over at 247. I'm sure when they do a rankings update, that's going to shift massively. But this is Purdue really getting on guys early and putting themselves in a position to get early commitments. Not as much so in the case of Weber, but these early commitments aren't happening now. There are only 6 players inside the top 50 that are committed. 2 of them are committed to Purdue right now. Foreman had that stat on Twitter today. That's a great one. Really nice stuff by Purdue here. This is big time. This is an important class because this is what replaces Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Wren, and Oscar Clough. I don't think I'm forgetting anyone. But those 4 head out, and you have a massive void of what's coming in. Now, I wouldn't be shocked if Purdue used the portal either, because you may have a really nice foundation for next year. You don't want to put everything in the hands of freshmen. You've got to balance it out a little bit. But, man, you look out to the future, and this is a really, really talented, really skilled team. You think of your guys playing the 1 through 3. You have Omer Meyer, Jakari Harris, CJ Cox, Luke Ertl, Jacob Weber, Jack Benter, Antoine West. That's 7 names right there with some real ability. Not all those guys can play. Now, do you push Benter to the 4? I know that's a conversation. We'll see what happens this year. But, man, I mean, that's a solid group. That's a solid group. And especially, it's going to be hard this year to get a great feel on where Cox and Harris are, because Smith and Lawyer are going to take up so much of what you have in the backcourt, with Meyer coming in as well. You really have to utilize that, because that's special what you have in those 2. And Meyer is fascinating, is intriguing of a recruit as I can remember at Purdue. But Purdue doesn't look to be going anywhere as a Big Ten contending program anytime soon. I don't know if anyone thought they would or not. Purdue's been very resilient. Purdue's been very malleable over the last decade. Purdue has really done a nice job at adapting to whatever the game throws at it. This is a big pickup, though. I know there's been, I don't want to say hand-wringing, but there's been commentary of wondering when Purdue will start recruiting at a higher level, given all the success the program has had. I'm always a little bit torn on the recruiting rankings in basketball, because I don't know that they're always as indicative as they are in football. It's much less of a numbers game in basketball, whereas in football it's almost a purely numbers game, and the teams with the most good players are going to be the best. Basketball's not all that dissimilar, but Purdue's found a really good staff at evaluating talent. This is good, though. This is kind of Purdue on that trend where Purdue has become a more attractive program, where Purdue has really built up some cachet. It's been to a Final Four. It's had some great success recently. It's operating among the top of the sport on a year-in, year-out basis. And you're seeing Purdue's brand grow. You're seeing Matt Painter's brand grow as a coach, as an evaluator, as a developer. There are a ton of positive things going for Purdue basketball right now. I know we're going to talk here more about basketball coming up. I think I'm going to have a basketball-specific episode. Might have to have a special guest on there to help talk hoops a little bit during the bye week here at the end of September. And then there in late October, we'll have the annual big Purdue basketball preview episode. For sure prior to the season opener, maybe prior to that exhibition game against Kentucky. God, that's going to be nuts. That game's going to be crazy. The reactions from that will be special. But some really good news for Purdue basketball, a program that really hasn't had a lot of bad news recently, but Purdue has a lot of good things going for it, and it's recruiting well. I think the attention in that class probably shifts to the front court now, where you will really need bodies to replace Trey Kaufman-Wren and Oscar Clough. We'll be back here on Sunday, guys. We'll break down Purdue's probably win. I almost slipped there. We'll break down Purdue versus Southern Illinois. If I jinxed it, you guys can come after me. We'll be back here on Sunday, though. We'll talk about whatever happened on Rohrman Field. Send in your questions, guys. Do so on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Email me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Feel free to send in basketball if you want to. Follow and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, @BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Safe travels to those of you headed to West Lafayette on Saturday for a 7:30 kickoff. Should be another beautiful day. Until Sunday, guys, take care and enjoy the game.